In this video, I am going to share 3 very important tips for you to identify and then attract your ideal clients as a freelance graphic designer. Let's go. What is up everyone, Ronnie here. Welcome back to the channel. It's always a pleasure to meet with you once a week to talk about anything Canva. And today, a little bit different topic. We're talking about your career as a freelance graphic designer. Some of you might be considering this career. Some of you might already have started this career and are looking for a client. And you might be struggling with finding the right client, right? So that's exactly what today's video is all about, finding better client as a freelance graphic designer. So without further ado, let's jump into the deck I have prepared for you and see how you can find better clients. All right, let's start with the why you want to become a freelancer. Okay, this I believe is the reward. And I'd like to start with the reward because it's not gonna be a walk in the park, okay? Becoming a freelancer and becoming a successful freelancer with clients that are actually good and make you feel good about your job is gonna be a little bit of a hassle, okay? But you will get there. It is possible to get there, and this video will help you. But first, let's start with the reward. Like, being your own boss means you'll get to benefit basically from 3 main things. And that is kind of my interpretation of being your own boss. You might have a slightly different one, but for me, it all comes down to more freedom, getting to choose the experiences you want to live, and also more control. Okay, so let's quickly go over each of these benefits, starting with freedom. Freedom is the freedom to work on your own schedule, okay? Work at the hours that work for you. You might be a young parent and you need to take care of your children, or you might be someone who is a night owl and you like to work during the night. Well, if you're a freelancer, these things will be all of a sudden available to you. Maybe not if you work for a company. So freedom of your time, definitely. Getting to choose the project you want to take on, the clients, the projects that motivate you. Getting to say no to specific clients or projects that come your way that you don't find interesting. That's a luxury, and that's a very nice perk of being your own boss. But also, when I say freedom, I mean creative freedom, like the way you will artistically direct a specific project, the creativity you can put into your work. That is your shots to call, really. And that's one of the things that I really love about working for myself. Okay, so that's for freedom. Let's have a look at experiences. Working for yourself will allow you to, if you want to, decide to work from very cool and exotic places. Like here, right now, we are living and working in Bali. We've been here for a month already. And if you could see in front of me, you will see this beautiful landscape with like blue sky and palm trees, and there's a big swimming pool right here in the co-working space. And last week we were at the beach doing some scuba diving. So we get to live these amazing experiences in different places of the world because we are not tied to one specific location. So that is very important for us, and that's one perk we really enjoy. Experiences might also mean getting to experience new ideas, pursue new ideas, new businesses, new partnerships. That is something very cool too. And also, experiences means maybe waking up one day, one morning, and decide, okay, I want to learn how to become a video editor, not just a graphic designer. So you go on Udemy, you purchase a course, and you start your journey to become a video editor. So you have the choice of reorienting your career, getting to learn new skills as you wish, not just what the company needs, not just what you need to do for a specific job. So you get to experience expanding your knowledge and decide to learn whatever you fancy. That's very nice. And then last but not least, the last type of benefits is obviously control. Okay, you get to call all the shots. You're your own boss, and that's really the point. You live your life on your own terms. You don't have someone or some company telling you what to do. You have all the control. So that's really nice. Control over your time. I already talked about this, flexibility, but also control over the finances. If you are successful as a freelancer, you get to keep all the money. That's your money. You earned it, not the money of some shareholders, not the money of a CEO or a founder. You are the person benefiting from the fruits of your efforts, your reward. All right, so that's in a nutshell the rewards, okay? That's the why we want to be freelancers, right? All of these shiny benefits and perks. But anyone who has been a freelancer for a certain amount of time already knows that it's not that easy, okay? Sometimes you get to work with complicated clients, and these experiences with bad clients can be very painful, okay? A lot of things could go wrong when working with clients. For example, you might experience late payments. So you have to constantly write emails or call or trying to contact your clients in order to get paid. That really is painful. You might, in the worst case scenario, have client ghosting you, disappearing and never paying you. That's even more painful. You might have to deal with clients trying to get ridiculously low prices from you, or trying to exploit you. Then you will probably come across clients that are constantly changing their minds, and it will make you go crazy as a designer because the work will never be done, never be finished. You have clients setting unrealistic deadlines, okay? Oh, I need this by tomorrow, when the work is actually super long presentation to design and you need at least a couple of days or maybe a week to finish it. Having to deal with multiple decision makers. That is sometimes if you are working with a client from an organization and there are a couple of different people in that specific department that is hiring you, and they give you a brief and then you do the work, and then they have to show this to their boss or to their colleagues, and then not everyone is on the same page. And so you have different people giving you feedback. As a designer, that is really annoying because you don't know who you need to please, who you need to listen to. So that is one of the major difficulties or typical aspects of a bad client, all right? Then you have the never-ending sets of revisions. So the bad client will keep asking you to change things, to, oh, could we try this? Oh, could we try this color? Or could we try the logo with this thing on top instead of at the bottom? It is really painful because the work is never finished and is continuing to drag. And usually these types of clients, they're not willing to pay you more for these revisions. They're just trying to abuse you into doing more things. And sometimes, you know, it's not the right thing. You know it's not the right design decision. They just want to try it because they think they can. So these are just some of the examples of bad clients experiences that I have personally experienced. I was never a freelance graphic designer, but I was a freelance video editor, or I had my business around video editing and I was working with clients. And so yeah, that really was painful. But the good news, though, yes, there is a copious amount of bad clients out there. And when you're starting, it might seem like that's all there is out there. Like all there is bad clients. So why the hell did I decide to become a freelancer, right? Well, the good news is for every bad client, you can find a good client out there. A client with whom it's going to be easy to work because you guys are on the same page, because the project is interesting, because you can see clearly how your skill set can bring some positive impact to the client and his or her company or business. So these types of clients will really make you feel happy about your job as a freelance graphic designer. They will make you feel valued because you can see, okay, I'm contributing to something and I'm having fun while doing it. So the real challenge though for all of you freelancers out there is, how do I find these great clients that will make me love my job? Well, we are going to see a few things you can set in motion in order to find more of these ideal clients. And we are starting with tip number one, which is don't say yes to everything. This is a typical rookie mistake, I would say. When you're starting your career as a designer, you will have this tendency to accept any kind of job. And that is mostly motivated by two irrational, I would call them irrational types of fears. The first one is the fear of not having enough work, the fear of not having enough money. And also because you don't know really how to sell yourself or your services, what prices to use. So you have this tendency to accept anything at basically any conditions. That is, in my opinion, a mistake. The second fear that might be driving this saying yes to everything is the imposter syndrome. oh, I'm not good enough, I'm just starting this and I should probably gain some experience, right? Saying yes to everything will probably lead you to being poorly paid as a designer because you'll be competing with pretty much everyone in every country. So that's not really a good idea. You will also probably work on projects you don't really enjoy, you don't really like. And as your first experiences as a graphic designer, this might lead to demotivation. You might lose your interest in that career path because your first 5 gigs were absolutely horrendous and repetitive and not creative at all. So you're starting to doubt about your decision of becoming a freelancer. You might also be taken advantage of by less scrupulous clients who are just trying to fish for the lowest price possible and trying to find a rookie designer who they can kind of like boss around and give them as much work as possible, squeeze as much as possible for the less amount of money possible. So that is really not a really good experience, but saying yes to everything will probably lead you to these types of clients. And then last but not least, saying yes to everything is basically going against everything we said at the beginning of this video. Remember the 3 benefits of being your own boss: the freedom, the experiences, and the control. If you accept everything, you don't have control, you don't get to pick your experiences, and you don't really have much freedom. You just need to find a client. So that's why I started the video with explaining the rewards. You need to keep that in mind. That's the why you are doing it. If you sacrifice this, you're just doing another job. You're just not working for a company, you're working for a client. All right, very good, Ronnie. I'm not saying yes to everything, but what should I accept then? Like, how should I decide whether or not it's worth it to take on a project, take on a client? Well, I have been thinking long and hard about this, and I came up with 3 factors that should probably influence whether or not you work with a client. And these 3 factors will be of more or less importance to you, like each of the factor. All right, the first one of these criteria is of course budget. Okay, let's be real for a second. Money is important. So before saying yes to a project, really look into it and don't hesitate to talk about money early on in your conversation with the client and figure out, is there enough budget from this client for me to even bother doing all of that job? Okay, you need to learn how to estimate how much work a specific project will represent for you, and then based on that workload, figure out a budget that works for you. A classic mistake from rookie designers, rookie freelancers, is that they do not know how to value their work. And this is not the topic of the video. I could do an entire video about this. There are some really great resources on YouTube about this. The Future and Chris Do, it's another channel, really goes deep about pricing yourself, value-based work versus hourly-based work. So I really recommend you check out The Future, the channel, The Future, and Chris Do's videos, because he's way better than me at talking about all of this. But basically, what I'm trying to say here is before you take on a project, you take on a client, make sure there is enough budget. All right, the second factor you should really consider before accepting a job as a freelance graphic designer is passion. And for me, passion goes hand in hand with creativity. Will you be able to fully tap into your creativity, your skills, your knowledge as a designer to help the client? Or is the gig a repetitive, kind of boring, less creative type of task, in which case you should think twice before accepting these kind of gigs? Because really working on a project without any passion will generate 2 things. Like first, you will be doing a disservice to yourself because you are pretty much kind of cutting the branch on which you are sitting and you are learning how to hate your job, okay? By working on boring, meaningless, less creative projects. You will get demotivated very quickly. And you're also doing a disservice to the client because if the work is not appealing enough to you, you're kind of robbing the client of the chance to find a designer that will be super enthusiastic about doing this specific work for that specific client. So yeah, if you don't feel the passion, don't take the job. And the last criteria that I would consider to accept a job or not is opportunity. Okay, is that job going to lead you to more opportunities in the future? So maybe it's not very well paid, maybe it's not the most creative job, but this is a very big company company. And I could see that if I do this correctly, this will lead to more work and maybe bigger project, or maybe because I'm working with this big name company, this will have a very good impact on my career. I might be tapping into the reputation or the size of this client to find bigger client in the future. So this is the kind of things you have to balance. So that's why I put it in a triangle: budget, passion, and opportunity. Maybe one of these three corners of the triangle is going to be more predominant. And it will be your job as a designer to decide whether or not it's worth pursuing this project based on like the budget, the opportunity, and the passion that might be into that project. So hopefully this decision triangle will help you decide whether or not to take on a specific project as a designer. Now, let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is to express the values you stand for. Being clear about what matters the most to you, about the values you stand for, and clearly communicating that will definitely help you attract the right kind of clients. Now, if you don't do that and solely promote yourself as a graphic designer that gets things done, then you will probably end up working with people who don't care about what you stand for, and they will just see you as a graphic designer. So they will be sending you tasks and just expect the work to be done. And for you as the designer, it will feel very dry, very transactional. No passion, no joy, no real impact. So if you don't want to get there, you really have to be clear about what you love, what you value, and what you stand for. So that's the step number 1 of this circle, this virtuous circle, is to clearly define what you stand for. Try to come up with a list of 3 to 6 values that are really important to you. And for that, I really encourage you to take your time. Go to a nice place, get into a comfy spot with a notebook and a pen, and really try to go to the bottom of it. Like, what really matters for you in this world? What kind of values do you really feel are the core of your personality? I made this exercise too, and I came up with 4 very fundamental values that I realized I stand for. This is my essence. For me, it's about teaching and empowering people. It's about helping others to live their best lives by helping them build businesses. It's about building community, and it's about being the best at what I do. I really enjoy striving for this excellence, for this perfection, okay? So these are the values I stand for, but I really encourage you do the exercise, you write down your list, because once you figure out what you want, what you stand for, what's important to you, then these are the rules that should be at the core of your decision making, the core of your freelancer business. So that's step number 1 of this circle. Define your values. Step number 2 is to communicate about these values, because it's not enough to know for yourself what they are about. You need to let the world know. You need to let the potential clients know, this is what I stand for, okay? So you need to communicate about your values, and for that, you'll have to use all of the different contact points you probably will have with your clients, okay? So that is your first meeting with them, the way you approach them. That could be social media, the way you talk, the way you behave on social media, the type of content you share on social media. It could be on your website, your profiles on specific websites like Upwork or Fiverr. All of these contact points with your potential clients need to reflect these values you stand for. Try to build a narrative, a story that encapsulates the values you stand for. Now that you have listed your values, you need to start wrapping them up into a narrative, into a story. And by story, I mean like the way you write your bios, the visuals that you use to communicate on social media. All of that is slowly going to become your personal brand. You need to learn how to refine that brand and consistently tell that same story again and again on all different platforms until people start recognizing you for that specific story, okay? If you think about people who are doing this super well, think about Gary Vee, like his immigrant story, how he comes from Belarus and his father started a liquor shop and all that stuff. Like, this is a story, if you follow Gary Vee on YouTube, for example, you might have heard him tell 1,000 times, and he's refined this story. He has different ways of telling that story. So you need to be able to do the same thing about your story. And this story, this narrative should lead you to step number 3 of the circle, which is to attract the right kind of clients, okay? If you you do a good job at communicating your story that basically tells the world what you stand for, what you're doing is you're planting a flag in the ground saying, this is me, this is what I do, this is what I value. If you value the same things, come and work with me. We can do great things together. So trust me, that is absolutely the best way to attract the right kind of clients, okay? There's a huge difference between saying yes to everything and doing what I just described, okay? Defining your values, communicating about these values and creating that brand story, and then attracting the right kind of clients because your story is appealing to them. You look like, okay, this guy is someone I'd love to work with. Clearly expressing the values you stand for will allow you to attract the right kind of client, like-minded clients. You will be able to infuse a lot of passion into the projects that you work on. And you will also, at the end of the day, make a much bigger impact because you will be working with people who are on the same page. And there will be this symbiosis, all the stars will align and you will pretty much have a much bigger impact with your work. All right, let's move on to the third and last tip I have for you to find better clients, and that is to create a workflow that suits you. The idea here is that you want to make sure you create a client management workflow that is going to be compatible with the lifestyle you are trying to pursue, okay? That ties back to the beginning of the video and the why you are doing this, all the benefits. So you really want that workflow to work for you and your goals as a freelancer. So in order to make sure that that workflow is actually compatible, ask yourself questions like, how often do you want to interact with the client? How do you want to communicate with the client? Is it email, Zoom, something like Slack, or simply using a Google spreadsheet? So there are different ways you can communicate with your client. How many sets of revisions will you allow your clients to request from you? And also, how will you tie loose ends before delivering the final outcomes of the project? So all of these are decisions you need to carefully think about because they will influence the type of experiences you will have with specific clients. If you have figured all of that out in the beginning in your workflow, then it will be much smoother and you have much more control over that workflow as if you haven't thought about this before. And this leads me to step number 2 of creating your workflow that works for you, is that you really want to create that workflow from the beginning of the process when you first get in touch with the client to the end when you deliver the final outcome and you getting paid and everything. So for that, ask yourself questions like, how many steps is there in your process? How do you first make contact with potential clients? Like, what do you say the first time you actually communicate with them? How do you set expectations and when do you start talking about budget and money? How will you run the briefing to make sure you are collecting all of the information from the client you will need to carry on the project? How will you make sure the client is aligned with your vision, with your strategy before really starting the creative work? How and when will you request feedback from the client? How will you deliver the final outcome? And how and when should you get paid for your work? Designing every single step from start to finish will basically remove that ambiguity for the client. They will know exactly what to expect when working with you, and that's what you want. And finally, once you have defined all of your steps in your workflow, you want to get the client's approval on these steps. So the best way is to get written approval. Always try to get every approval in writing, so a detailed email, or even better, a contract that sums up the different steps you're going to cover with the project and also the different terms and conditions of that specific gig, like a contract. But yeah, you want the client to clearly, specifically agree on the steps because this will allow the project to unfold much smoother, both for you and the client. All right, that is all I have for you today. That was a lot of information and a little bit different from the typical Canva tutorials we create on this channel. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comment section below. Are you a graphic designer? Are you considering becoming a graphic designer? What are the different challenges you struggle with as a designer? Indeed, I am more than happy to continue tackling these topics of building your career or being a freelancer or even an entrepreneur, but I need to know what you guys want to know. All right, I'm gonna leave you with this other video right here. These are 6 steps to help you find your first client as a freelance graphic designer. I will see you there.